This is the same thing you sent us in an email? I like it.
Do you have enough room? Got so much paper up here.
Oh my God, look at all this stuff.
I don't think so. I don't think
Oh, thanks for these.
Oh,
Anything you want to add, just let me know.
How are you?
Ah, yes.
You got anything to add to it? Take away.
Okay.
Put it out in the bar.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe we could have him say how many years in a row.
Yeah.
And it just shows it.
Oh, that's fine.
See that?
A little chart laid out.
All right, good evening. 7 o'clock, like a rocket. Welcome to the June 20th ultimate board meeting of the Orange County Board of Commissioners for this fiscal year, he said gleefully. This is our regular meeting here at the Southern Human Services Center. Thank you all for being here. Commissioners, you have several items at your places. There's a revised item 4A, which is on the orange page. There's a budget ordinance, which is 6A. There's a request to revise a budget ordinance from Commissioner Price. There's something else that's labeled 6A. Well, there's a bunch of things 6A. There's a PowerPoint. There's a resolution of intent. There's information about the county pay and benefits plan. There's an item for 6D on the community centers. There's a PowerPoint from Commissioner Jacobs on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and on and on. I'll just remind you of what they are as we get to them, but, and if you don't have it when we get to it, we'll make sure you get it. So there is one, I have one suggested change to the agenda. The folks are, item 11B is Animal Service Advisory Board appointments, and we have the chair and we have our friend Bob Morato here for that item. So I'd like to move that up with the board's agreement to 4E, right after the resolutions, and we'll take care of that appointment so those folks can then go on. And is there any objection to that?
Nope.
Okay, so without objection, we'll move that up to 4E. Are there any other additions or changes to the agenda? All right, if not, then we will move forward apace with our public comments. As I think most everyone knows by now, public comments here are divided into two separate sections. This part of the agenda is for folks who want to make public comments on anything that is not on the printed agenda, sort of the open public comment section. If you are here tonight to speak to something that is on the written agenda, please sign up at the back, and when we get to that item, we'll call you, we'll call for your comments at that time.
I hope so.
All right, so there is one person signed up for this part of the public comments, not on the agenda, and that's Roland Russell.
I'm here.
We're glad to see you. Welcome.
It's great to see you. I'm representing the Human Relations Commission, which is a part of the Department of Housing, Human Rights, and Community Development, and wanted to report to you that we had a town hall meeting on June the 8th, where you all were busy with your work session, and wanted to report to you that it went very well and express our thanks to you for making it possible for us to meet in the board meeting room at the Whitted Building, and for the wonderful support we got from our staff at the department, but also from Todd McGee, whose help in advertising turned out a really good crowd. We did not intend to come up with conclusions. We intended to have a very informed, educational, and respectful dialogue, which in fact is what happened. There were some gleanings, some learnings from that, which we will pass on to the school districts. And I believe that you have a copy of that report before you, and I hope you'll have a look at it in your leisure. I also wanted to report to you something we think is a kind of a coup. The community read for this year is going to be held in conjunction with the entering students at the University of North Carolina. And the folks that run that program at UNC have seemed excited to have the community participate in it. You have a flyer at your desk with regard to that. The community read book is How Does It Feel to Be a Problem by Mustafa Bayoumi. As you know, entering students at University of North Carolina have a reading over the summer and then discussions when they arrive. Members of the community will be invited to sign up to be a part of the discussions on campus, and the staff at the university have offered to train leaders for discussions of that book, which we will hold in the public library, in the Chapel Hill Library, and in several of the bookstores at the same time that the conversations are going on campus. But thank you so much for your support. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to represent you and to advise you with regard to human relations issues. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to respond.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Russell?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. All right, that was the only person signed up to speak to items not on the printed agenda, so we'll go on to item 3, announcements, petitions, and comments by board members, trying to keep it to a 3-minute limit per commissioner. We'll start with Commissioner McKee.
Thank you. The only thing I'll say is I'm glad that Mr. Russell brought this to our attention on the summer read. I quite often feel that that I am a problem in different areas because I enjoy playing devil's advocate, and if someone else doesn't bring up an alternate side of an issue, I'll do it just to make sure that gets an airing. So I'll leave it like that. I'm hoping that this is a smooth night. This is our last regular meeting until the summer break, and hopefully we can move through expeditiously and get everyone in and out pretty quickly.
Commissioner Jacobs.
First, I asked Steve Brantley, our Economic Development Director, his analysis of House Bill 795, which he sent to us, but I didn't feel that it was my place to encourage him to go ahead and forward it to the NCACC. If the board feels that's appropriate, then we should ask him or the manager to do so. I'd also like to request that Deeper make a presentation to us in the fall about the Lands Legacy Program. I have no idea what's going on with that. I know there are a lot of people lined up to get conservation easements. I know we have an update periodically of the entire plan, but I don't recall it happening anytime recently. We also had occasion, as Mr. Letman will remember from the MPO, where something went directly from the outboard onto the MPO agenda without the commissioners or Carborough seeing it. So I think we're going to have to work out a better process. It was aggressive, but it was not vetted. So hopefully we'll do a better job of that. And then at that meeting, we got 2 reports which I wanted to share. One is the PowerPoint, and it's called the deficiency analysis. And the idea is to look at what the changes are going to be between basically now and 2045. And there's some interesting demographic information, but I found the most interesting at page 14, the regional travel times, because now they're talking less about vehicle miles traveled as the time it takes people to travel. And so vehicle miles traveled is going down, but what's going up is how long it takes you to get there. And one way in particular, Chapel Hill to Raleigh by 2045 is going to increase 93%, and how long it takes to get there under current conditions. And Durham to Hillsborough, 60%, Hillsborough to Chapel Hill, 62%. So part of what's being studied is what are the alternatives. And one alternative that DOT was discussing was what are called managed motorways or smart highways, which is to control access to the road on the entrance ramps and have sensors in the road and letting traffic on at discrete intervals so they fill the space in the lane so that more vehicles can be managed on the same pavement. And the option they were discussing from Wade Avenue to 54 would cost $30 million versus a high occupancy vehicle or toll lane, which would cost $700 million. So nobody's actually put one into effect in the United States yet. It's an Australian idea, and of course it's backwards because they drive on the wrong side of the road, but a couple of states are now implementing it. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we can all think of reasons why it won't work, or intersections where it won't work, but that was an interesting new idea, and I think it's a little bit indicative of having a more creative Department of Transportation and governor willing to support innovation.
Benny?
I think they're experimenting with that out in California, though, a little bit, where they pace cars going onto the highway. There's a light you can't go until you're told to go, and so they're measuring, but it's probably not the same thing. I don't have any petitions. I just want to mention that Saturday we had the one-year celebration for the Cedar Grove Community Center, and it was well attended. Commissioner Jacobs, McKee, and Price were there, as well as the manager and the deputy manager. And it was a really nice celebration. We saw the May Day dance again. The most exciting thing that we learned is that there are about 50, 60 kids that are going to be in camp this summer there, and that started this week. So they are using the community center the way they said they were going to, and taking care of the children, taking care of seniors, making sure that kids are there after school doing their homework. And it's on our agenda tonight where we're handing that over to the Cedar Grove community and their association. So it's a happy time. And if you do go up there and visit, they encourage everyone to please sign in because they're keeping records in their history, which they've been keeping all along. And they want the people's names to be on their docket when they come in so they can keep that for the future. So thank you. It was a great celebration.
Great. Mia?
Nothing tonight.
Renee?
Yes, just a few things. First, as part of our effort to be inclusive and demonstrate our appreciation for the work of our advisory boards, the members that serve, I was just asked that the Agenda Review Committee figure out a time and maybe a creative means for receiving reports from our advisory board chairs or the representatives. Periodically, I think we should have them report to us, the BOCC, on the scope of their work, some of the concerns or issues that they're having, and in the progress of the work. And by creative, I'm thinking it doesn't have to be, a long written report, maybe just as something that I've seen recently quite often is more like a flyer or a poster where there's just like a number, a statistic, and a small caption underneath, and you just kind of get a snapshot. And this is something that I think should just be succinct and to the point. And it's also something that Commissioner Jacobs has mentioned in the past as well. The second one is just, it's not really information, but it is anything new. I'm sure you all know, but based on information that I heard over the weekend, the bill to raise the age of juvenile jurisdiction, which we've all been in favor of, has been placed in the budget. And because many legislators, mostly the Democrats, oppose the budget, they may seem to be voting against the raise the age bill, but they really are supportive. But that's just an unfortunate way that has come about. And finally, our youth representative at the NCACC annual conference will be Zachary Sellers from Orange High School. And many thanks to David Hunt and staff for helping him and with his assignment of getting to know a little bit about Orange County government.
Thank you. Mark?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
All right, so just I think on Renee's point about the advisory boards, we should add that to our advisory board work session, which is going to come up in the early fall and review everything that we're doing, so that will fit right in with that. Barry, were you asking that we just forward the document Steve Brantley provided to the NCACC, or were you asking for a letter or something else?
Well, it was his analysis for our benefit. Whether he and the manager think it should be adorned somehow so it's comes across better, or if it's just being straightforward as he was to us, I would leave to them.
Well, given that it's our last meeting and this is a time-sensitive thing, is there any opposition on the board to authorizing the manager and Mr. Brantley to work together to get something out on that bill along the lines of what was provided? All right, so let's go ahead and do that. And then I just wanted to ask a follow-up question on the MPO item, about the item that went directly from the outboard. Maybe this is a longer conversation, which we don't have to have now, but I appreciate your bringing to our attention what appears to be a problem of process, but is there any concern that you have that the board should look at that particular item that's on the list before allowing it to go forward? I mean, I just want to know if...
Well, the reason that it probably should have is because it affected Carborough's jurisdiction, and they're the ones who brought it to the attention of the MPO as a matter of concern that we were forwarding a project that they hadn't seen that affected their jurisdiction. So I just think we don't have a process. And part of what has changed is we want to be more aggressive. We sit there at the MPO, and Theo can attest to this. Other jurisdictions are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars and having all these projects, and we're getting $8,000 or nothing. And so this was, I think, a good faith attempt to fill in the gap, but we just have to have a process. And I think that Mr. Letman knows that. He was there. And so we just need to make sure we have a process.
So we'll note that, and we'll put that on the agenda going forward with Mr. Letman and the manager and Carborough as well. Okay. The only announcement I would make is all of us just came a little while ago from the incredible groundbreaking at Rogers Road for the long overdue Rogers Road sewer infrastructure installation. So that was very exciting. Was very well attended, and I really appreciate everybody being there and all the work that the county has done, that our allies and the other governing bodies have done, and of course the incredible leadership and organizing and advocacy that the community has done. So it's a project that's been a long time coming, and we really look forward to seeing that go forward. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 4, which is proclamations, resolutions, and special presentations. And we have several. The first is a proclamation recognizing Orange High School softball team winning the 2017 state championships. And if I could ask Coach Eddie Davidson and his players that are here to just come up to the podium. And I'll ask Commissioner Jacobs if he would read and move the proclamation.
Okay.
Oh, and the other coaches too, I'm sorry. Coach Davidson's name is the only one listed on the program, yeah, but all of you should come up and introduce yourselves too. Why don't you introduce everybody who's here, and then Barry will read the proclamation.
I'm Eddie Davidson, I'm the head coach. This is Mia Davidson, she's one of our senior captains. This is Jansen Manley, she's also one of our senior left fielders. We got Christina Givens, she was our senior pitcher. We got Coach McCauley as our AD, and sitting over there being shy is our principal over there.
Oh.
Go ahead and tell them who that is.
Eric Yarborough.
So Yarborough, so he needs to be up here because he was a part of this.
Yeah, Mr.
Come on.
Yarborough, I don't want to call out the principal, but you need to come on down.
All right.
So,
Okay. Proclamation of recognition on Orange High School softball team winning the 2017 state championship. Whereas on June 3rd, 2017, the Orange High School softball team captured the North Carolina High School Athletic Association's 3A state softball championship. And whereas under the guidance of Coach Eddie Davidson, the Orange High School softball team earned its first NCHSAA state title in Orange High history. And whereas the Lady Panthers completed the season with a 26-3 record, and whereas the Orange County High softball team included the Gatorade North Carolina Softball Player of the Year for 2016-17, Mia Davidson, and whereas through hard work, dedication, teamwork, and commitment, the Lady Panthers brought honor upon themselves, Orange High School, the Orange County School District, and Orange County. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Orange County Board of Commissioners expresses its sincere appreciation and respect for the Orange High School softball team and Coach Davidson for the Panthers' outstanding achievement and their inspiration to youth across North Carolina through their dedication, teamwork, and athletic prowess. This, the 20th day of June 2017, and I'll move that as a resolution.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Congratulations. I'll take it. So I'm going to present this, we'll take a picture, and then please go up and accept the congratulations of all the commissioners. Put it together around you two, principal. I'm having these high school flashbacks. That's like a dream come true. I'm getting boss around the principal.
Nice.
Go on up there. Give everybody a shake there.
Great, sure, sure. Thanks for coming.
You don't yell at us.
I was telling them we were at a camp, we got about 60 little girls at the camp, so we ran over here, so sorry about that, baby. I know. Thank y'all for having us here. Good job. All right, thank you. Congratulations.
All right, in keeping with the spirit of champions, the next item, 4B, is a proclamation recognizing Carrboro High School women's soccer team winning the 2017 state championship. The board will consider approving a proclamation recognizing the Carrboro Schools women's soccer team for winning the 2017 state championship and author the chair to sign. I'll ask Coach Jared Drexler, any other coaches that are here, any administrators, as well as the Carrboro High School women's soccer team to please come forward. And I will ask Commissioner Burrows to read the proclamation and move it, please. I don't mean move it along, I mean move the motion.
Gotcha. Whereas on May 27th, 2017, the Carrboro High School women's soccer team captured the North Carolina High School Athletic Association's 2A Women's Soccer Championship, and whereas under the guidance of Coach Jared Drexler, the Carrboro High School women's soccer team earned its fourth NCHSAA state title, also winning the state title in 2012, 2015, and 2016, and whereas the Lady Jaguars completed the season with a 21-1-1 record, and whereas through hard work, dedication, teamwork, and commitment, the Lady Jaguars brought honor upon themselves, Carrboro High School, the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools District, and Orange County. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Orange County Board of Commissioners expresses its sincere appreciation and respect for the Carrboro High School women's soccer team and Coach Drexler for the Jaguars' outstanding achievement and their inspiration to youth across North Carolina through their dedication, teamwork, and athletic prowess this the 20th day of June 2017, and I move that as I
Second?
make a motion.
All right, before we vote on this, I forgot to ask the coach to introduce everybody who's come with you.
This is Natasha Turner, Grace Nanny, Alexa Wanovich, Ashley Hong, and Bryn Holt Ling.
Well, thank you all for being here. So the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Congratulations.
It's not bossing around the principal. Doesn't have anyone to boss around.
Please go accept the congratulations.
Congratulations for all your work. Congratulations again.
Congrats. Have a good summer.
Congratulations.
Get to relax a little bit now, maybe, I don't know.
It's just a habit.
Again, yeah.
Made it through it.
3 in a row. Yeah.
This is good. Not only are we celebrating these victories, but to get a little exercise, which is important. All right, next up, item 4C, USDA Rural Business Development Grant Award for the Piedmont Food and Agricultural Processing Center and approval of budget amendment number 10B. The board will receive a brief presentation from staff from the U.S. Department of Agriculture regarding the letter of conditions, along with draft addenda for the award of a USDA Rural Business Development Grant in the amount of $145,511 to Orange County and the Piedmont Food and Agricultural Processing Center. Consider approving a budget amendment to accept the award, the conditions, and et cetera. Subject to final review and approval by the county attorney's office, authorize the manager to sign any paperwork associated with the grant and approval from the county attorney's office. Mike Ortosky and Eric Holman will start us off. Welcome.
Quite a mouthful. Thank you. That's a hard act to follow right there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman Dorson. Good evening, everyone. I'm the agriculture economic developer for the county. Thank you to the board for the opportunity to present this grant for consideration. Also, specifically, thanks to Greg Wilder and the county attorney's office and the manager's team who went the extra mile to get us before you guys here at this particular meeting. Basically, I want to introduce Eric Holman and Ms. Hilda Hawkins. Eric Holman is the executive director of Piedmont Food and Agricultural Processing Center. We know it as PFAP. Ms. Hawkins is the Community Program Specialist with Rural Development Agency of USDA. And she will follow it a little more detailed, but we'll also be here to answer any questions regarding this, regarding acceptance by Orange County. As Chairman Dorson pointed out, we're asking the board to consider approving the budget amendment number 10B to accept the award, also its conditions and the associated draft addenda, subject to, as he said, final review and approval by the county attorney's office, and to authorize the manager to sign any paperwork associated with the grant, also subject to review and approval by the county attorney's office. George Vitale, who's also with RDA, may be suffering what Commissioner Jacobs talked about, traveling between Henderson and Chapel Hill tonight. So he's running a little bit late, but we will hold forth with it. We will all be able to be available to answer any questions after that, but with that, I'll turn it over to Eric Holman.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Holman.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners, County Manager, and staff. Thank you for this opportunity. So PFAP, as you recall, 6 years ago, benefited from Orange County acting as their fiscal agent as they applied for $1.3 million in funding that helped get PFAP started. We haven't gotten much in the way of funding before this, but this grant will allow us to update equipment, add additional capital equipment, do more outreach to bring in more businesses to Orange County, and we'll actually work with our partners, the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association, to put agricultural equipment out in the field. So just where we are now with Piedmont, with the PFAP, we have 50 clients. Last year, we contributed to the economy $2.6 million in retail value produced there, created about 100 jobs. So this will help us to do even more. And I will turn it over to Hilda from the USDA office, and she can tell you more.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you. My boss is supposed to be walking in the door this moment, but I'm up. This what we have proposed to do, a grant award for the Orange County for $145,000 and $511, and it's to fund the project that Dr. Holman was talking about, and for the use of the fund was to grant for use of purchase equipment and provide technical assistance to the Piedmont Food and Agriculture Processing Center. And I've just got a few things like the scope of work. You must administer the grant in accordance with approved scope of work Agency comments and required changes, if any, must be implemented in the project. The financial management, the recipient must provide for financial management system to adhere to 2 CFR 200.302. And now I'm just going through the letter of conditions because I know you all have the whole packet. And just talks about the disbursements of the grant. The grant funds will be dispersed by the agency on a reimbursement basis not to exceed 1 disbursement every 30 days. And we have several forms in the back that will need to be filled out, and I was already told by Dr. Holman that the county manager will be signing off of that after legal has taken a look at that. And the some of the things in the back will be like our rural business corporate financial assistant agreement, that the federal financial report, the requests for advancement or reimbursement, and then it's got the debarment, just some legality things, certification for the 1048 is certification regarding debarment, suspension, ineligible, or voluntary exclusion, lower tier covered transactions. And then we have another form which talks about the certification regarding drug-free workplace requirements and equal opportunity grant. I'm just going through some of the things in the back. The letter of intent is here. And we have a request for the obligations for funds to disperse the money. And then we have, on the letter of conditions, one more thing is that it's in that we have to have the money dispersed, the first start, and within 60 days start, and then the funds have to be funded to the project, all been funded within 12 months period of time. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? I don't think so. That was very thorough, so thank you. So at this time, oh, we do have a question.
I have a comment.
Comment, please.
Well, I sort of represent this board on the PFAP board, and I just want to point out a few things. One is that over time, we've realized, especially Dr. Hallman, that some of the equipment is less appropriate to the needs of the users than we thought at the beginning. So some equipment is being sold and other equipment is being acquired. The second is that even though this is an Orange County grant and Orange County is approving it, this is still a 4-county joint project. The board looks at it that way, and we're still hoping to keep it that way, and that's part of what's attractive about it. And Eric may have been able to tell us how many different counties are represented. If people.
We have about 9 different counties now, from Forsyth County to Cumberland.
And finally, PFAP is working as it was intended, which makes life more difficult, because the idea is to grow businesses so they then leave. And so a business will prosper, will take up a lot of space, bring in a lot of income for PFAP, and then it'll go out on its own. And so we've gone through that at least 3 times. And so we're in one of those 4 times. And so we're in one of those interim stages where there are a lot of clients, but none of them are big clients. So it's an ongoing evolution, but Dr. Hallman / Eric has been very good at managing the changes. And we appreciate the grant.
Thank you.
Earl, you wanted to add something?
Just a comment that PFAP actually ought to stand for opportunity. It's opportunity for the producers, it's opportunity for the startup, whether they are strictly an agriculture or an agriculture-related business or something a little bit further out, like Luna Pops. So it is an opportunity, and it's not only an opportunity for them, it's an opportunity for all of us to access locally grown, locally processed, very good, very well handled food.
All right. Is that your boss who just came in?
Oh, yeah, so, there's no need.
We done.
So we're just about to vote on this. I don't know if you want to add anything, Mr. Vital.
No, I better not if I'm late.
Well, I think it's going to happen, so you don't want to jinx it. So, I appreciate those comments. Any other comments? I'm just kidding. If you do want to speak, you're welcome to.
Oh, no.
All right. So, no worries. So we need a motion to approve Budget Amendment 10B to accept the award, its conditions, and the associated draft addenda, subject to final review and approval by the County Attorney's Office, and authorize the manager to sign any paperwork associated with the grant, subject to final review and approval by the county's attorney's office.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. We really appreciate this, and thank you, Mr. Hallman, for your great work. And this will be, as my colleagues have already said, this is we have continuing high expectations for the great work. All right, item 4D is a proposed resolution regarding the reduction of methane emissions. The board will consider adoption of a resolution to petition the governor of North Carolina to enact certain measures intended to reduce emissions of methane related to the use of natural gas and power generation. Commissioner Mark Markopoulos brought this forward, so Mark, I'm going to let you introduce and read the resolution.
So natural gas has been considered a bridge fuel, a resource that we were happy to use to help eliminate coal plants. And as scientists have gotten a grip on what's really going on, we found out that the natural gas and the methane that's released and the production and incineration of it is worse than coal. And you'll hear more about that when I read the resolution. And I just want to note that every whereas on this resolution is followed by a footnote. So if anyone wants to do some research, find some further information on this, you can go to the website and get this resolution and have a lot of information at your disposal. So you want me to read the resolution, then we'll hear comments? Is that the proper?
Yeah, why don't you read the resolution and then make a motion, and it'll get seconded, and then we'll have any discussion.
Okay, we have anybody from the public here to speak on this?
No, there's no one signed up to speak on this.
Okay. This is a resolution to slow the climate crisis by reducing methane emissions from the fracked gas and power industries. Whereas an unprecedented 3-year global heat wave, ongoing sea level rise, and increasingly intense weather extremes are already devastating communities, wildlife, and property in North Carolina and around the world. Whereas those least responsible for causing this crisis have been hurt first and worst, primarily low-wealth communities and people of color, and humanity is quickly running out of time to slow this enormous challenge before it accelerates under its own momentum beyond our control. Whereas methane is 80 to 100 times more potent than carbon dioxide at trapping Earth's heat, and has become the driving force behind the rapid heating of the planet. Whereas large amounts of natural gas, which is mostly methane, are being vented and leaked directly into the air from various gas equipment, with emissions measured at rates of up to 12% of the total gas produced by wells using fracking technology. Whereas these emissions make burning natural gas for electricity at least 3 times worse for the climate than coal, in addition to other health impacts and explosion risks. Whereas the recent surge in methane emissions is largely due to the U.S. fracking boom, which is being driven by Duke Energy and other utilities' expanded use of gas to generate electricity. Whereas most U.S. gas and electricity corporations are fighting efforts to reduce methane emissions. Whereas reducing methane emissions can be achieved quickly and cost-effectively while creating thousands of jobs. And whereas immediately reducing methane emissions from the U.S. natural gas industry can slow global warming enough to allow time to replace fossil fuels with cheaper clean energy, such as solar, wind, and storage technologies, now therefore be it resolved that North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper shall use his constitutionally granted executive authority to ensure that by December 31st, 2018, no natural gas originating from fracking operations is used in or transported through North Carolina. By December 31st, 2022, no other natural gas is used in or transported through North Carolina unless it can be verified that the methane emissions associated with its production, transportation, and end use are at most 0.5% of gas pumped from the well, and no new natural gas-fired power plants or pipelines are constructed in North Carolina, and all existing gas plants and pipelines are phased out expeditiously and replaced with clean, renewable energy. And I would move that we adopt this resolution.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Jacobs?
I just wanted to point out the hot pink sheet here that on the chair's palette is orange. In 2012, the Orange County Board of Commissioners had a resolution opposing shale gas development in North Carolina. So we've been on record for quite some time against having it transported in our county or developed in our state.
Thank you for pointing that out. Earl?
I believe Commissioner Price had her hand up before me.
I think I saw your hand first.
Okay. I do not dispute any of the whereases. I actually have some extreme concerns over the effect of the fracking industry, not only on the roads, but the very fact that they do not disclose what the chemicals are that they use in the fracking material. The very fact that it's put in under that extreme pressure, to me, says that if you're creating cracks horizontally, you're creating cracks vertically. Those cracks vertically will contaminate groundwater. So all of the whereases I have no problem with, no issue with. Where I'm going to be prevented from voting from this is the resolved. It says specifically by December 31st, 2018, no natural gas originating from fracking operations is used in or transported through North Carolina. Because there's no way to differentiate what portion of any gas in any pipeline that I'm aware of contains fracking natural gas or that produced in other operations. I don't know how you're going to enforce that other than shut it down completely. It also says by December 31st, 2022, no other natural gas is used or transported through North Carolina. That means no natural gas is used or transported through North Carolina unless it can be verified that the methane emissions associated with this production, transportation, and end use are at most 0.05% of gas pumped from the well, and I don't know what the well means. I also don't know how you're going to differentiate and determine what gas or what portion of that gas in any pipeline is from methane-producing wells or otherwise acquired. And then the third point, no new natural gas-fired power plants or pipelines are constructed in North Carolina, and this one particularly, and all existing gas plants and pipelines are phased out expeditiously. I don't know what expeditiously means, and I totally agree with replaced by clean renewable energy. I see clean renewable energy being our only long-term alternative, but I do not believe that we can or should set a 2018 nor a 2022 deadline. First of all, we have no way of enforcing it. It's not realistic. And I believe should the gas pipelines be shut down anytime in the short term, and I don't know how to define short term either, but I believe that the impact will fall heaviest on those least able to afford it, because it's going to have to be replaced either by coal or it's going to be replaced by something else that increases the cost of everything that we use, from plastics to food. So for that reason, I can't support this as it's written. However, if the motion maker and seconder would agree to replace therefore it be resolved with language similar to what was contained in the 2012 resolution, which I supported, saying that therefore be it resolved that the Orange County Board of Commissioners does hereby urge the North Carolina General Assembly to continue to pass laws and regulations that prevent the use of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing in the state, and to take no action that would weaken these laws and regulations. And be it further resolved that local government should retain regulatory authority regarding proposed drilling-related activities. I will offer that as a friendly amendment. Under that scenario, I can support it. Under the current, I can't.
So that's a friendly amendment to the motion maker. Do you accept that amendment?
No, and I can explain why.
All right, well, I know Renee had her hand up, so do you want to comment?
Yeah, my only concern was in one of the whereas clauses mentioning Duke Energy by name, and I would just, unless we're going to list all of them, I'd prefer to leave it generic and just say, which is being driven by utilities, expanded use of gas, and so on.
So that's being offered as a friendly amendment as well?
And he can explain.
I would not accept that either. On that one, Duke Energy is one of the largest utilities in the world, and they happen to be located right here. And if we can prevail upon Duke Energy to accept a renewable energy future, we can make great progress on climate change, because their power generation alone is responsible for a huge amount of emissions. And it's really important that we recognize that. And there's someone in the audience that may be able to speak to the measurement piece that Commissioner McKee spoke about. Would it be okay if I asked if he would mind speaking on that?
That's fine.
John Runkle, would you be willing to address that?
Good evening. My name is John Runkle. I'm a counsel for NC Warren, and we made this emergency methane action along with the NAACP, Food and Water Watch, and about 20 other organizations, and a whole lot of the clergy got involved in this. And the reason why it goes to the governor is because the governor has pretty strong executive powers, and there's a list of about 20 or 30 things that the governor can do. He's already taken the first step by keeping us in the Paris Climate Accords. We're recommending that he does a green ribbon panel to study this problem, how to be able to measure the difference between what is being fracked gas and what is being other non-fracked gas. But there's a whole lot of things that the agencies can do. So, you know, whether you can measure it or not, you can figure out what's coming up from the Transco pipeline, where the sources are from the Gulf and from the Texas fracking field. So you can measure those kind of things. But it's not, I mean, the governor just doesn't say by 2018. There's a process there that the governor has to get this panel of the best and the brightest in the state and try to figure out ways to really reduce the amount of natural gas that we're using. And we see it's emergency. So the 2018 and 2022 really set the tone. This is an emergency. We're going to have to do something about methane in our state. And I think it's going to be up to state government and up to the governors and led and supported by the counties and the cities and that kind of thing. I can ask specific questions if you have one, but I think that, you know, we're trying to document everything we've got.
Thank you, Mr. Runkle. We appreciate that. Is there any other discussion? All right.
I'd just like to add
Yeah.
one thing.
Go ahead.
The economic issue always comes up when we talk about things like this, and it's becoming clear that the most costly thing that we can do is not use cheaper fuel, but it's to not make the transition to lower impact alternative energy. That is, and we see it every day in the news. We see it in the rising waters and the superstorms. That is the most costly end result of inaction.
Other discussion? All right, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
On the basis of the comments that I made, no.
All right, the motion passes 6-1. McKee dissenting. All right, we're going to move on back now pursuant to the change we made at the beginning of the meeting to item 11B, which is the Animal Services Advisory Board appointments. And item 11B, it's on page 394 if you're following along electronically. There are 5 nominations or recommended nominations, and we have the chair of the board and Mr. Morato here, so if you'd like to come up and say a few words and enlighten us on the path we're about to proceed upon.
Good evening, Chair Dorson, Commissioners. This is Molly Mullen, who's the Vice Chair of the Animal Services Advisory Board. I'm Bob Morato, the Animal Services Director. 3 of these positions are reappointments for Ms. Mullins, Dr. Mullins, Dr. Hoffman, and Dr. Elmore. And then there are 2 new appointments. One of those, Diane Obeid, is coming to you recommended by the Animal Services Advisory Board on the basis of a careful consideration of the applications and an interview that was done with Ms. Obeid. And the 5th is, and I hope I don't get this wrong, Heather Payne, I believe it is. And Heather is coming to you not at the recommendation of the Animal Services Advisory Board, but at the recommendation of the Council of the Town of Chapel Hill. And so we bring those before you for your consideration so we can continue with a full and vital body.
Dr. Mullen, did you want to add anything?
That's about it.
Well, thank you for being here tonight and for your service on the board. Are there any questions from the board at this time? All right, then. What say you?
Move the nominations.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to move to appoint Dr. Susan Elmore for position 1, Heather Payne for position 4, Diane Obeid for position 8, Dr. Maureen Hoffman for position 10, Dr. Molly Mullen for position 11. Any other comments or nominations? All right, then, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, now we go back to item 5, which is public hearings. We do have one on the agenda tonight. Item 5A is a public hearing and adoption of bond order and resolution related to 5.9 million two-thirds school bonds. The board will conduct a public hearing as outlined in the two-thirds bond authorization schedule, adopt the bond order and resolution to publish the bond order. This bond order authorizes the issuance of two-thirds general obligations bond, which I'm sure Mr. Donaldson will explain to us what that means, in an amount not to exceed 5.9 million to support school facilities, and the bonds replace the general pay-as-you-go funding in fiscal year 2017-18 and a portion of fiscal year 2018-19 as reflected in the capital investment plan. And I'll just note for everyone watching at home, these are not the bonds that were voted on in November of last year. So with that, Mr. Donaldson, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. We've had 2 previous actions that you've taken on May 2nd, which was the introduction of the bond orders, and again on May 16th. The North Carolina statutes allow local governments to issue GO bonds without referendum if we retire principal in the current fiscal year. In this case, we're retiring $8.8 million in general obligation principal, and we can issue 2/3 of the $8.8 million, so that gives us a capacity of $5.9 million, which we plan to issue. It is noted in the CIP, it's a part of the debt affordability analysis that we've had work sessions on. On page 2 of the abstract are the projects that will go towards funding both school systems on a ADM basis. For the Chapel Hill school system, $3.5 million, and for the Orange County school system, $2.4 million. For Chapel Hill, that includes athletic field improvements, classroom improvements, and cooling tower replacement improvements. For Orange County schools, that includes upgrade science classrooms at Cedar Ridge High School, roofing project improvements, school safety initiatives, and food service facility improvements. I do have bond counsel here as well. Following the action after the public hearing, the two actions that will allow us to proceed is the bond order, adoption of the bond order, and a resolution to publish the bond order. Bond counsel is here, and if you...
All right, are there any questions at this time for Mr. Donaldson? If not, we need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing is now open. I don't believe anyone,
Signed up to speak.
no one has signed up to speak on this issue. Any comments from the board at this time? All right, then, we could entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Public hearing is closed. And now there are two attachments to this item. One is the bond order, and one is the resolution to publish the bond order.
I move that we adopt the bond order and publish the resolution.
Do they need to be read?
No.
They don't need to be read, and they don't need to be done separately. Is that correct, Consigliere?
I'm comfortable doing them both.
All right, so a motion has been made to approve the bond order for $5.9 million in the 2/3 general obligation bonds for schools and to publish the bond order. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All right, then. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, next up. Oh, and I forgot to mention in my comments at the beginning, just remind the board that immediately after this meeting, we're going to go into closed session to conduct the manager's evaluation. So just wanted to remind everyone of that. All right, next up is item 6A. We're on the regular agenda now, and item 6A is the approval of the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget ordinance, county grant projects, and county fee schedule. And we worked out what seemed like a lot of this on Thursday night, but there's been a couple of wrinkles that we have to iron out as we go through this. Travis will walk us through that, and then we have Commissioner Price's resolution also, which will be part of this before we actually approve the budget resolution.
Great. So as Chair Dorson, you indicated, I think we have 3 decisions to make. One is to correct some mistakes that were made on the intent to adopt resolution. Those are red line changes on the attachments. One's called County Employee Pay and Benefits Plan, page 2 of 5. And then changes in county staff positions, page 4 of 5. So there were 2 errors basically on the first page. One, we're using the term permanent employees instead of regular employees, excuse me, to be consistent with other terminology used in HR. And then in item K, we had misspelled parental, so it read paternal. So it's really parental leave, not just paternal leave.
Good
And
catch.
then, yeah. We wanted to be as inclusive as we could be. So, and then on page 4 of 5, as the manager discussed at our meeting last week, our intention is to include the community paramedic coordinator in the list of positions that would be authorized, but it would be contingent on receiving the outside money that we talked about from likely UNC Hospital or Piedmont Health. So those are the 2 changes to those documents that we would need to have approved tonight.
So why don't we go ahead, and
Yeah, we
since
can do
those
that.
are non-controversial and likely require minimal debate, so is there a motion to correct the typos, to identify the community paramedic coordinator as being fully offset by outside revenue, and what was the third one? Was there a third one?
It was the typographical errors in the community paramedic coordinator.
Okay, so is there a motion to make those 2 changes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that's 7-0.
So the next discussion point would be, I think there's some interest from board members to revisit the discussion about decreasing the memberships to the chambers of commerce. As the board knows, currently in the economic development budget, there's $8,500 that's used to pay for a Chapel Hill Carborough Chamber of Commerce membership and $1,000 to pay for a Hillsborough/Orange County Chamber of Commerce membership. Those were reduced during our amendment process. So in order to know the amount of money that's sort of left over, we would want to use some, if we want to restore that amount of money, that would need to come from the $112,000 that was left over through the budget process last week. So that would be the next item.
All right, so I'll turn to Commissioner Price. There's a proposed amendment at our places, if you want to read that and then start the discussion.
Okay, so this is amendment to the resolution of the intent to adopt the FY 2017-18 budget approved by the BOCC on June 5th. In the interest of sustaining partnerships and building our relationships within and among the various entities in Orange County, whenever possible, I'm submitting the following amendment: that Orange County continue its memberships in both the Chapel Hill Carborough Chamber of Commerce and the Hillsborough Orange County Chamber of Commerce at the current levels, and that the manager, in cooperation with Steve Brantley and other department directors, proceed to examine membership options and return a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners regarding membership in the two chambers that will benefit all parties.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Discussion. Is there any discussion? You put that hand up so I know you want to talk. I keep telling you, it's not an auction. You don't have to be so coy. All right, Mia.
So I support this resolution. There's a lot of complexity, I think, to the relationship between what the county does and some of the contributions that the chamber makes. It's not just around economic development, but as I think we're all aware, they were leaders in the advocacy for our bonds this fall, and I suspect that there are more things like that, and so I am comfortable with basically setting us back to where we were and then having staff look at all those kinds of things and consider that over the coming year and then revisiting this next year, right, which was your intent. So I agree with that.
Barry?
I agree up to a point, but not entirely. I certainly agree that both chambers have been very supportive of the goals and values that Orange County has. We can be proud when we read that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is way out in right field, that our chambers are way more in the middle, and that they reflect what Orange County citizens and residents believe. And I also am willing to leave the basic dues from the county in the budget for each chamber. What I'm not willing to do is leave all the other, as yet still undetermined, additional fees by other departments or by departments that are apparently being paid by the county. I would rather see that chamber membership be moved to the manager's office, that we direct the manager to investigate how many different funding entities we have under the umbrella of county government that are contributing when the county itself is already a member, and that we get a report back in the fall. This way, we could still express our fiscal and verbal support for both chambers, but not keep spending money that we're not even sure from whence it comes or why it's going.
Other comments?
I'd just like to respond to that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my concern is that because we're unsure of what what is being given and what the benefits are, the consequences, we may be jeopardizing our relationships with a lot of the hundreds of businesses that are parts of both of the chambers. And I think it's in the best interest of just keeping, good relationships, that we should at least give an opportunity for the manager and the staff to look at it. And then if we have to look back and make some corrections, we do that. But rather than, blindly walking in and just cutting ourselves up basically at the knees because we don't know.
Mark?
I agree with Commissioner Jacobs. Having learned that there are other donations being made from county agencies, I really want to learn more about that before we, move forward with a final decision. And I think it is appropriate that we make the $8,100 commitment to the Chapel Hill Carver Chamber of Commerce and the $1,000 to the Hillsborough Chamber of Commerce, and then sort out all the other ancillary dues that have apparently been paid. And I think we can, get that done relatively quickly. I don't think it's a huge discussion, so I don't think it's going to be an outstanding issue that's going to cause any major problems. If it does, there's bigger financial problems somewhere, right? So anyway, I'm comfortable with that.
Earl?
We very well may be arguing over how many angels could stand on the head of a pin, but I think the discussion Thursday night where we decided not to fund these dues highlights the point that decisions made on the fly don't usually work out that well. We made a decision then, I voted for it, but I voted for it on the information that I had at the time, which didn't unfortunately turn out to be totally factual. It's not there's no fault. I mean, we didn't have the full information to make a decision, myself included. This board prides itself on transparency and process. And my point to how many angels stand on the head of a pin is this. We can either vote tonight to just simply not fund it through the agencies or we can let it go. I think Commissioner Price's motion goes to process. It goes to the fact that we will go forward as we have been going forward. We will let the staff have time to develop a process for us to look at, and we can address that either as a budget amendment mid-year or in the budget discussions next year. So therefore, I'm going to fully support Commissioner Price's motion.
Well, I'd like to just ask, I was surprised to learn that, I thought all we were talking about was $8,500. And I was surprised to learn that all the various departments are also paying. I think it goes to the point of transparency, and I think I'd say that's both on us and on the chamber, that there's a whole host of dues being collected and things. Travis, do you have any rough approximation if you added up all of the county departments, and you could leave the schools out if you want to, because I'm not sure I would include them, but if you can't, roughly what that total is based on all these contributions?
So we're putting together an itemized list so the board has all of that information. But when we look at just the totals, it's 20 to 25,000 that we spent in 16, 17. Now, most of that is Visitors Bureau. They have a membership and do some sponsorship. So that's not general fund money, but it's certainly a county department directed money.
Yeah, so that's a lot of money, I think. I had, especially when I heard that people can be members of the chamber for $400. So I will just say, I think we do need to do this analysis and figure out what's happening and what we're getting for any of this money. I will also say I'd be willing to support some lesser amount than what the current level in the interest of good relationships and in the interest of recognition of the historical collaboration. But I will also say broadly, I'm not comfortable with the county being a member of an advocacy organization. We don't do that with any other organization, with the exception of the NCACC and NACO, and I have concerns about both of those, which I've shared with the board previously. But I think, and I know there's a lot of controversy about the impact fees and the chamber's position or non-position, and however you come out on that, I think that illustrates why membership as a county government, it just doesn't seem appropriate. I appreciate many of the services they provide, and I think we should contract for those services. If the departments determine that these services are valuable, the way to do it is just to contract for them, which is how Durham does it, according to what information I've been provided. So I do think we need this analysis. I think, going to Earl's point about transparency, I mean, this is very surprising to hear. And so I don't think I can support this motion as it is, but I would support something in between this and what we approved on Thursday night. Penny?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Dorson. I agree with you. I also want to say that I started working on this a couple of months ago. Commissioner Dorson and I reviewed this in agenda review. And at that time, I thought that we had the correct information also to make a decision. We didn't. So we went forward with the budget with the information that we had at that time. There was nothing alarming to us, and that's why it didn't come up. As I continued to dig deeper, yes, there were some misstatements on Thursday, but we also had absolutely no idea that you had to be, different departments had to pay to be part of the chamber to be involved. So that means economic development is paying, but then, maybe a different department is not paying, is not a membership in the chamber. I do have a problem with going back to what we had, the 8,500 and 1,000. I am supportive of keeping a good relationship, and if that has to be something lower than that, I could compromise on that. But I am not going back to this knowing that we have all these other dollars out there that we don't know where they are yet. I mean, no one on this board knew that we had 4 different departments that were paying chamber dues, plus the Friends of the Senior Center, and we don't know what else is out there. That doesn't show that we've done our homework either, that we didn't know, and I don't know how long this has been going on for. So. I am willing to compromise, but I can't support this amendment.
Earl, then Mark, then Barry.
Couple of points. Membership in an organization, membership in an advocacy organization. This may be the only or one of the very few organizations that we have a membership in, but it most certainly is not the only advocacy organization that we support with county dollars. We actually just left an event in a community that we have spent a lot of money in very good causes of county money under advocacy conditions. That community advocated for years and years and years for a solution to their concerns, and money was directed at addressing those concerns. Now, the chamber is not going to come to us with those kind of concerns or those kind of requests, but what the chamber will do, it will either advocate for a county position or it will advocate against a county position according to the interest of its membership. And I can attest to that because I spent over a year trying to get the Chapel Hill Chamber to support my concern for light rail. And I was never able to convince them that I was right, nor was I able to convince this board. So it is what it is. What they did do and where they did step up was on the bond and on some of our sales taxes. They not only stepped up to support it, they stepped up to help lead it. As far as what we do tonight, I think, again, we're arguing fine points because Commissioner Price's motion allows us to do exactly what some of our other board members are arguing, is to look at this. We can come back as early as the first meeting in September and look about what we want to do with these other memberships from our departments. And I have the same concerns that have been expressed. I'm not carried away that I found out that we've got the county as a member and then departments that are a member. I'm basically considering that a little bit of double dipping, but I'm not going to lay blame on that either. But we can come back any time we want to address that issue as soon, and up to and including as soon as we reconvene. So I think Commissioner Price's motion allows for that. I think it sets that up to have the process start with our staff to bring us that information back when we reconvene to address any concerns that members have. I think we need to leave it where it was at last year, like it was last year at this point, and move forward with readdressing it.
Mark?
So I'm curious about how long a process would take to sort this out. Like I said, I don't think it's real complicated. I think if it wasn't for the summer break that we could get to it relatively quickly. Is there any possibility that we could have a process that would happen over the next month despite our schedule and be in any way effective?
We can bring it back to your first meeting. I don't think it needs to be taken care of over the summer. We will take care of it over the summer and bring it back to you to your first meeting. We'll just, we apologize we don't have the information tonight, but we were just seeing, in pulling up the vendor list, we were just seeing what we've just shared with you, but we don't have it specific and accurate enough that we feel you can take any action tonight based on that. But we will have that information for you, and we can have it for you as early as the first meeting in September, if that's your pleasure.
And refresh my memory on your resolution. Did that include that we would eventually get to one payment from the county?
Talking to
Commissioner
me?
Jacobs, yes.
I have a substitute motion, but I didn't make one. But yes, that's what I would propose.
Okay, I think that's a good idea as well.
For both.
Commissioner Jacobs, you were next in the queue.
Yes. Well, first, to a degree, I agree with Earl, except that we don't even know. But if, assuming we're paying annual fees, then we can't pay them now and then revisit whether we're paying them in September. They're done for the year. It would be even worse to say, change our mind, we want our money back, or we're cutting it off at the end of September. So as the chair wishes, I could make a substitute motion, or we could vote on Commissioner Price's motion, and then I'll make a motion.
Well, I'll ask Commissioner Price as the motion maker. Would you like a vote on your motion now, or would you like to hear at least the substitute motion?
I'd like to hear the substitute motion.
Okay?
Okay, my motion would be that we reinstate our basic membership in both the Chapel Hill Chamber, Chapel Hill Carborough, and Hillsborough Orange Chamber. We suspend all other payments from county entities until the manager is able to identify all the various county funders, that going forward, we locate all chamber funding in the manager's office, and that we ask the manager to report back to us in the fall. And if you want to say at our first meeting in September, that's fine.
So do you want to offer that as a friendly amendment?
Sure. Well, I can offer it as a substitute
Right,
motion.
okay,
But yes, if it'll be accepted as a friendly substitution or amendment, that's fine with me.
You're the motion maker. Do you? Let me just check with our sergeant at arms. What is the proper procedural? There's been a motion been made and seconded. So are we required to vote on that motion, or can the motion maker and the seconder either accept that as a friendly amendment, and if it's a substitute motion, does that take precedent, assuming it gets a second?
Technically, there's no such thing in your rules as a substantive motion. So if it's not accepted as a friendly amendment, which it would be, it would have to be treated as a hostile amendment and voted on in that order. So if they want to accept it as a friendly amendment, that's fine. If they don't, and if they choose not to do that, then it would be treated as a hostile amendment.
And it would get voted on first?
Yes.
Okay. So it's back to you, the motion maker, and the seconder. Oh, Earl was the seconder. I'm sorry. So it's back first to the motion
Since
maker.
it's a hostile amendment, why don't we just go ahead with the original?
Okay. So you want to treat it as a hostile amendment. So do you want to make it as I wish we had a better term than hostile, as an alternative,
Yes, I'll make it as an alternative motion, superseding the original motion.
all right? Is
So
there?
don't we need to vote on mine first?
No, we need to vote on, if his gets seconded, I think that's what John just said.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
second that.
Okay, so now the motion on the floor is the
Alternative.
alternative, non-hostile,
Right, smiling.
smiling
Can you please,
amendment.
could we please hear it again?
Yeah, could you read it again?
Yes, that we reinstate our basic memberships in both the Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and Hillsborough Orange Chambers, that we suspend all other payments from county entities until the manager is able to identify all the various county funders, that going forward, we locate all chamber funding in the manager's office, and that we ask the manager to report back to us at the first meeting in September.
Question?
That's been seconded. Question?
What-
Penny?
What is the basic, what do you mean by basic? Funding.
I think there's an 8,000 plus number for,
8,500.
Yeah, 8,500.
and
for-
1,000
and
for the Orange Hillsborough.
It's essentially the money we thought we were voting on Thursday when we didn't know about the other.
The two-thirds, the 200% more.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so does everyone understand the motion just before, I'll take a question, but just to be clear on the motion, it's to 8,500 for Chapel Hill Carrboro Chamber, 1,000 for the Hillsborough Orange County Chamber, all other funds suspended pending a report back from the manager at the first meeting in September. Everyone just understand that motion. Now, question, Mia.
So the piece of this I'm particularly worried about is the Visitors Bureau, because their dues aren't just from, I mean, things that they pay are not just from our money, it's from those of the towns that contribute to them. So I feel like they're a separate, that there's an overlap. Okay, everybody's wanting to answer my question. So I assume is that why you guys are raising your hands?
This is why I am. I can't speak for.
Okay,
Commissioner
so, I'm sorry,
Penny?
what did you need to do?
So the Visitors Bureau is not funded by any tax dollars. It's not our money. It's all funded by the money that comes in when people stay here. So that it is a separate board. The board is not made up of the towns. It's made up of the chamber. It's made up of hoteliers. So it runs as a separate entity. It is under economic development, but it runs as a separate entity.
So what does that mean for Commissioner Jacobs' motion? Or let's ask Commissioner Jacobs what that means for his motion.
Well, I actually thought about including the Visitors Bureau in the motion, but I assume that the manager, even though it is semi-autonomous, I assume the manager will examine what it's paying and what relationship that is to the county's payments. But beyond that, there's only one town that contributes to the Visitors Bureau, and that's Chapel Hill, which purposely is not a member of the chamber. So I don't think that would change my thinking in any way.
Well, and let me just add too, to Commissioner Jacobs' early point, if you say no now and the dues are due, they could join, if the report comes back in September, that they should be part, or they can be, people can just join at that point. But, Penny?
The Visitors Bureau Board voted on their budget without contributing to the chambers.
And that was, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
That
this
was
is a
new.
free-flowing debate.
I'm sorry?
And that was new? Had they've changed their policy? Is that, or?
That's correct. And I can get, again, I would like to get that information for you, but I know that we voted on that. And I can get the information when they started paying into the chamber. They didn't always, and then they did, just like these other departments that paid. We don't know when they started and when they didn't. So we could do that all in this report.
Renee?
Yeah, I'm still, I mean, I understand what your motion is. My concern is, I don't like the idea of double dipping either, but I'm concerned about what our action could do to, for example, Hillsborough, Orange County Chamber. I mean, we've been talking mostly about the Chapel Hill Carrboro, but what about the other chamber? And we don't know. We just, I just hate to make a decision that could be harmful and have consequences that we don't know about, even if we had to prorate at this point for a couple of months. I just don't like the idea of blindly walking in and saying not to pay the dues. And, I'm also concerned about process. I mean, what I originally was looking at was economic development dues. Now, is this going to change and of course, that really didn't come out of our operating budget. That's their budget, correct? Can we even entertain what goes on with the other departments at this point?
Absolutely.
Oh,
I
we
mean, the money that, general fund money was used to pay the dues
For
from
all?
economic development, yes,
And
and
for-
the 1,000, yes. We did not use Article 46 sales tax money. That was general fund money in the economic development budget.
And what about the other departments, like the library?
They're all
They're all
general
in
fund
funds,
departments.
Yeah, but again, I'm just concerned about the impact that this could have.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, I see the walking in blind from the other side, right? That we're paying for
We're
stuff
blind.
we don't know.
Right.
We don't know what we're getting. We don't know what services we're getting. And, there may be some we want to keep getting, and there may be some we don't. And and that's why I think having this report and then determining whether the best model is to pay for services on a contractual basis. I mean, I think I appreciate what you're saying. I think doing what we've been doing has a blind quality as
it
well.
does.
Yeah. Mia?
I have a question for Travis. Did you say that the bulk of the money was the Visitors Bureau? So,
Of the additional, so Chair Dorison asked how much in total, and that total was 20 to 25,000. About 10 of that was coming from the Visitors Bureau through they have a separate membership, and then there were some other sponsorships that they paid for.
okay.
And I just want to be clear, the Visitors Bureau did not vote to stop sponsoring.
Right.
They voted to stop paying a membership dues and would like to be, if there is a membership dues, would like to be under one, if that's the case.
Under one,
The county pays a membership,
the county, okay.
not, you pick and choose
No,
what
no, I didn't know what
departments.
you meant by one.
Yeah.
All right. I think
Wait, I hadn't finished my.
Go ahead.
I venture to say, I think we've made a mountain out of a molehill relative to the size of our budget. And so I just felt the need to share that.
Well, I mean, you can say that about a lot of things.
Right, I do.
$20,000 to $25,000 starts adding up. Pretty soon you're talking about some real money. So we've talked this through pretty well. There's a motion on the floor to have $89,500 in dues to the two chambers. All other dues in any county agency to be suspended pending a report and analysis from the manager's office brought back at the earliest possible time when we reconvene in the fall.
And that in the future, all payments come through the manager's office.
And that in
So
the future-
It shouldn't be the responsibility of the economic development director to monitor what other departments are doing.
That's right. All right, so that's the motion. It's been made and seconded. It has been molehilled. So it'd been mountained, actually. Yeah, you're right. All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
No. Wait.
Okay, hold your hands up if you said no.
Wait a minute, what are we voting on?
We're voting on the substitute motion.
Oh.
So if you voted no, raise your hand.
Against
No.
the substitute.
Against the substitute motion.
Oh.
Okay, so the substitute motion fails 3-4. All right. Now, would you like to make your motion again?
Okay.
Isn't her motion still on the
that-
floor?
Well, yeah, so her motion is back on the floor. So now, Renee, you don't have to make it again.
Okay.
So Renee's motion is to restore the complete status quo ante. And that's been made and seconded.
Question?
Yes.
Is it exactly like it is here? It's coming out of the Economic Development Office?
The motion says that everything will continue at the current level, and then the manager and Steve Brantley and other department directors will do the kind of research we've been talking about. But as far as the funding goes, your intent is that everything is as it was. The library, however many other
It is.
departments have them. Yeah, we don't know. Is that accurate?
Yes, and we can bring it, I mean, if the manager feels that it shall all be brought under her office after the investigation is fine.
Okay, so the motion is to restore the status quo ante completely, somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000, and then getting this report back. Any further discussion? Mark?
Just to clarify, we're restoring a status quo amount that we don't know.
That's right. We're restoring a status quo amount that we don't know, but we think is between $20,000 and $25,000 last year.
Okay.
All right, so the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor of this motion, say aye and raise your hands. Okay, you're supposed to say aye also.
Aye.
Okay, so there's 3 in favor, Price, Burrows, and McKee. All those opposed?
No.
No. That's Jacobs, Rich, Markopoulos, and Dorson. So that motion fails. So now we are now back where we were on Thursday night. So does anybody want to make another motion?
Move we adjourn.
That has to be done.
Yeah, that's right.
Might have said.
All right, does there anyone want to make another motion?
Earl's got his hand.
Earl?
I will make a motion that we restore the, both chambers to $8,500 for Carrboro, Chapel Hill, $1,000 to Orange County, and that we defer any decision on departmental or Visitors Bureau until we get the report back. That's not saying we fund it or we don't fund it, but we defer that decision to September.
Well, I'm not sure we can say we defer that decision, can we? I mean, don't we have to make, it sounds like you're not making Barry's motion. You're making a different motion.
I'm making a very similar motion to what Barry's, but I'm saying to defer the decision and do it with a budget amendment
Right.
in
But-
September.
So to be clear, deferring the decision means nothing else gets paid but the $9,500
At this time.
in this budget. So am I wrong that that's identical to Barry's motion?
Oh, I'll second it.
I think you're right.
So I'm asking the manager, if this motion, which has now been made and seconded, is approved, the only money that's going to go into the budget is the $9,500.
Yes, and I would say the difference would be Commissioner McKee did not direct it to the manager's office, so there is a difference, and that we would come back with information, and the decision on others would be deferred until the report came back. Is that correct,
Earl?
Commissioner McKee?
And as far as directing it to any portion of the management, we can make that decision in September when we decide whether or not to fund it.
But the manager's office is going to do the analysis, just to be clear.
But the management does the analysis on everything.
Yes.
Penny?
Question, if that's the case, then only economic development is a member of the chamber. No one else is a member of the chamber. That's what you want?
No,
Well, that's what you're
that's
saying.
not, no. I'm saying that the county is a member of the Chapel Hill Chamber as well as the Hillsborough Chamber through this budget process, and that any other decision on any part of it is deferred to September.
But you're saying it's coming out of the economic development budget.
No.
Well, then you need to have it, you need to direct it out of her office then.
It's suspended until we get a report. Nothing comes out of any office, nothing comes out of anything, no decision on any departmental participation is totally suspended until September.
Yeah, so I think it's going to just come out of the general fund, and it's
Yes.
going to be the county will
Yes.
be the member until we get these
Yeah,
decisions.
okay, yes, I understand I understand what you're saying now. It comes out of the general fund, paid out of general fund, and the county for the membership for Chapel Hill and Hillsborough comes out of general fund, and then any other participation, if we decide to do any other participation, will be decided where it comes from at that time.
Right, and the member, the named member will be Orange County.
The named
not
member
any
will be
department.
Orange County.
Right, okay. Everybody understand that? We have a closed session tonight, I just want to remind everybody. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Rich dissenting. All right, now we can hopefully approve the budget.
So now, oh, sorry.
Yes.
Chair Dorsey, I also want to make one observation, suggestion. Maybe, I mean, one thing that I experienced with the miscellaneous budget amendments in this process was it was like almost up to the last minute when we finally talked about them and had our discussions and things started to accelerate. And I think that might have been part of this problem. And another one or two as well. So maybe we could think about having like a deadline 2 weeks before the final meeting where we indicate that we have when we're pulling the budget together to get ready to vote on it.
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I made that point to the manager following our meeting on Thursday, that we should really have that meeting where we're going back and forth. Should not be the meeting before this meeting. There should be at least a week or two in between, so we could correct the, the excited utterances that come out of that process like we're about to right now. So,
Because any one of those items, ordinarily, if it hadn't been part of the budget process, we would have discussed, we would have sent it to staff, we would have come back for further deliberation, but it just got caught in this whirlwind.
yeah. Good observation. Barry?
May I just suggest that when we have this discussion in September, we also might want to discuss whether, as a member of the chamber, we would like the chamber to support our positions, and if it's not going to converse with us before it takes positions or encourages others to do so that are contrary to county policy, as the chair mentioned in passing before. If we're a member, then we should have the same kind of give and take, because we don't really do that. We just accept our membership, but as elected officials, we don't participate in their decision-making process, nor expect them to try and influence ours.
I think that's a great point. Even more critical now that we know we're funding it at $25,000, so, or we were. All right, so with that, we'll go on to the next budget decision point.
So one more micro decision before we move on to approving both the operating budget and the capital budget. So at the end of the budget amendment process, the board, we believed it was the intent of the board to use $112,000 to offset the Chapel Hill Carborough City School District rate. So we would be conveying essentially general fund dollars into the school district tax fund. And as you know, when we use general fund dollars and give them to the school district, those have to be distributed by ADM. So we wanted to talk about perhaps a couple alternatives. So now that we've used $9,500 of it to fund the chamber dues, we've got $102,809 left. So the options before us, from our perspective, would be to save the money in the general fund, and that would have the effect of increasing our undesignated reserve from 16 to 16.05%. And then in addition to that, we would reset the Chapel Hill Carborough district tax rate back to the revenue neutral rate as opposed to reducing it. We could also use that money to reduce the county-wide ad valorem rate by 6 cents, or 0.06 cents, down to 83.71. And also reset the district tax rate back to the revenue neutral rate. Or the third option would be to take those savings essentially and distribute them by ADM, but include them in the undesignated one-time funding category that we created last week. And then you could either reset the school district tax rate back to the revenue neutral rate, or the equivalent tax reduction using that just one-time money of a smaller amount. Since we're distributing it by ADM, the district tax rate would go to 20.13 cents.
All right, so is everyone clear what the issue is? You know, I was pushing to lower the the school district tax rate, and we can't do it by saving fund balance. So if we want to do that, and I hope we do at some point, we'll have to do it by just actually lowering it and then finding out how to either keep the school district made whole or dealing with less money. But so we can't do that. So we have these two options before us, three options really. And so again, one is just leaving the money in the general fund, which was discussed that night. One is reducing the ad valorem rate Both of those require resetting the district tax rate to what it had been, the revenue neutral. And the third is to distribute the 102,000 by ADM, and then we could reduce the Chapel Hill district tax rate by the offsetting ADM. Earl, then Barry, then Renee.
I will make the same argument that I made on Thursday night, that we just set this money aside in the undesignated reserve and reset the Chapel Hill Carver District rate to revenue neutral. We will have issues coming up as budget amendments. I can imagine we're going to have some needs surface with social services, and we can use some of that money, all of that money, none of that money, as we go through the year. It'll give us an option to have that money for use.
Barry?
I agree with Earl that I think it should go into the county's undesignated reserve, but I also, and I would be glad to make a motion if it's necessary, suggest that we schedule a discussion, perhaps at the retreat, about equalizing the district tax. Is that a desirable philosophy? What are the mechanisms for doing so? What would be the ramifications? Because I supported the idea, but I don't think we understand really, if we can do it, we need a strategy. We can't just do it in increments. It's such a large difference that it would take decades to make it even. And is that still a desirable outcome? And if it is, how do we accomplish it? What's the plan?
And not to barge in, but I would endorse Commissioner Jacobs' additional.
Renee?
Well, I basically was going to say the same thing, but with a question. We, in past budgets, we had the social justice or safety net fund. How much do we still have that, and how much is in it?
$250,000 is in the budget as is today, yes.
You mean in our current?
For 17-18, we carried forward the same amount that was in there last year.
Oh, okay.
Mark?
I would agree with option number one and having that discussion. One of the reasons that I voted against it the other night was I felt like it was a pretty interesting topic that a lot of folks would like to weigh in on, and we ought to really deliberate on it. So I look forward to that discussion.
Mia?
I agree as well. I think it just makes sense to leave it in the fund balance, and I think it is time to have a discussion about it. I don't think we really had a long, thorough discussion about that, maybe in the entire time I've been serving on either the school board or a county commission. So that would be coming up on 10 years.
Penny?
Yeah, and I agree with that also, and I do think that if we are serious about it, we do have to set some sort of policy to figure out, the strategy, but then a policy. Because I think, Commissioner Dorson, you've been saying this every year that you wanted to do it, but really we just couldn't quite figure out how to do it. And I'm glad that we thought that we figured out a way, but I'd like to continue the discussion with it. So I agree with number one.
And I agree. I also agree with everyone's sentiment about talking about it. However, I'm going to support option two. I think we should reduce the county tax rate. I think that, again, the same arguments we made for lowering the fund balance to 16% initially still apply. And so I'll vote no on the motion for number one. But I do appreciate the suggestion, and I think it's a great one. And I hope I made a note, and whoever's on the retreat planning committee, I think that's a perfect topic. So, all right, does someone want to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion that we exercise option number one for this amount of funding.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Motion carries 6-1. All right.
So now you can move on to 6A and 6B, and staff's recommendation would be to approve the manager's recommendations on each of those.
All right, so 6A is the approval of the fiscal year 2017-18 budget ordinance with the changes we just made, county grant projects, and county fee schedule.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Next, 6B is acceptance of the 5-year capital investment plan and approval of the Orange County Capital Investment Plan projects of $24,495,770 for fiscal year 2017-18. Paul, I have you listed down for this item, but I don't know that there's any presentation that anybody needs. Any questions anybody has? All right, is there a motion then?
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the 2017-22 Orange County 5-year capital investment plan, approve funding for fiscal year 17-18 as stated in attachment 2 of the agenda, year 1 in the capital investment plan, and adopt the fiscal year 2017-18 county capital projects as stated in attachment 3, and the fiscal year 2017-18 school capital projects as stated in attachment 4. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, everyone. We have a budget.
Yeah, that was the small amount, and we argued over the $25,000.
Yes. Well, you know, there's a forest trees issue, always. All right, the next item is item 6C, Community Home Trust Acquisition of the Landings at Winmore. The board will consider approving Community Home Trust request as outlined in the attached letter for BOCC approval of the acquisition of the landings at Winmore, and to modify the terms of the development agreement attached to the property, and to allow the acquisition of this property. Annette Moore, our interim housing director, will make the presentation.
So, Commissioners, in 2007, Orange County, as a member of the Orange County Home Consortium, awarded Community Home Trust and the landings at Winmore $300,000 in home funds to acquire property in Carborough to develop a low-income tax credit housing project. The landings is a 58-unit tax credit housing development with rentals specifically for 15 families earning less than 40% of area median income, 21 families earning less than 50%, and 22 families earning less than 60% of area median income. We also, in that process, we entered into a development agreement with the landings at Winmore. And the terms of that agreement were that it was a 30-year loan at 2% interest with a monthly payment of $1,100 approximately. The balance of the loan is currently $252,000. And in a separate agreement, Community Home Trust was given an option by the landings at Winmore to purchase the property at units at the end of the tax credit qualifying period, which was 16 years. At this time, the owners of the landings at Winmore are interested in transferring the property to Community Home Trust. The affordability restrictions on the property would continue to ensure that the housing remains affordable. But in addition, as part of the development agreement, there was a terms put in there that would, the agency the property would be transferred to would exclusively serve families with incomes not exceeding 80% of area median income. As we know, the Community Home Trust serves families with more than 80% of area median income. And so we would have to change the language in the development agreement as well in order to allow them this transfer of the property. Also, as part of this process, Orange County has to agree to the transfer. The Community Home Trust has done due diligence on the property. That is before you, what they found. And also, what they have said to us is that they want to contract with a property management company that is certified in housing trust fund, tax credit housing to do the property management for the agency. So we're asking you to look at this and determine whether or not you want to approve it.
All right, there's one person signed up to speak on this, Mr. Dowling, but do we have questions for Ms. Moore first? Gary?
I wasn't clear, so are we saying that we would change the agreement to indicate that people could buy housing based on what the Community Home Trust allows, which would be up to 110%? Or they would have to adjust their policy to only allow up to 80%?
So in this particular development, there's our 99-year affordability documentation's on there. We have a declaration on there. So they could not rent these properties to anybody earning more than 60% of area median income. So regardless of what their who they serve in these units, they would not be allowed to serve anyone above 60% of area median income.
Where does it, in the abstract, I don't even see 60%. I see 80 and 110.
It's in the declarations, which you do not have before you, but I've reviewed.
So that's why I don't know, that's why I'm confused.
Yes, so there's the documents, there are the documents that are part of the affordability legal documents that we have. There is a deed of trust, a declaration of restrictive covenants that has the 99-year affordability period. There's a development agreement, and in the development agreement, that's where this language comes from. And there's a promissory note and a deed of trust. So all of those documents are the documents that we have that secure not only our loan, but also the terms that HUD requires us to have to secure the affordability on the property.
If I could just, essentially, the property has this 60% restriction.
Right.
But also, the other documents that Ms. Moore is describing would prohibit any entity that serves anybody above 60% from being involved in the project. So the 60% is going to stay on the project, but we're changing the agreement to say, even though this entity goes up to 80 or 110,
They can't fund above 60.
that's right. for
And
this
you
project.
understood that from reading this?
No, I understood that from being the board's representative on the Home Trust Board.
okay.
And from talking to Ms. Moore about it.
Okay, may I ask another question?
Please, yeah.
What percentage of the area median does a school teacher make in the Chapel Hill Carrboro school system? Or a firefighter or a police officer?
What we consider working housing, working class housing, would go up between 80 and 110. So for a family of four, that would be, oh no, numbers, I better not. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers would be, but we would say it's between 80 and 110%. Robert, is Robert here?
Yeah, Robert, why don't you come forward? Maybe you can provide some of the numbers. So maybe tell us what is area median income, what's 80, what's 60, and then maybe one of our staff people knows or maybe Commissioner Burrows knows what a teacher makes.
He's saying it as well. He doesn't know what 110% of area median income is. It depends on, and the reason why we don't know the exact number, because it depends on how many people are in your family. So the number changes with the amount of people that are in your family.
Well, let's see if we can get the number for a family of four. So everybody has Google, right? Somebody look it up, and let's find that and figure that out. In the meantime, do you have other questions?
I'll have a question for Mr. Dowling.
All right. Do you want to hear from Mr. Dowling before we get more questions?
I think I saw that it was around 52,000 or something
Yeah, I
like
want to
that.
say that too. 57.
80% for family of four is about
57.
Yeah.
50% for a family of four is about 55,000. I don't know. 100% for a family of four is probably about 70,000. I don't know the numbers offhand. We won't be. This is a rental project. We won't be renting to anybody at 80 or above or at 60 or above. The property is required to rent to people all below 60
some below 50, some below 40, we will adhere to those restrictions.
Do you want to make your comments, and then we can open it up for questions? You did sign up for 3
Did.
minutes. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. We are in the home ownership business. Commissioner Jacobs asked, will they sell homes? Because we always sell homes. This is a rental project. It's a low-income housing tax credit rental project. We're not in the rental business, not yet. But it's a development that I participated in, got some home funds for them back in '07. We have a right of first refusal. The property is struggling. The owner is in Charlotte. The owner wants to convey the property to us, we've done a lot of due diligence, and it seems to me that this property needs us to own it. Because if we don't own it, I don't know if it's going to make it. And the restrictions are fine. We understand the restrictions. It's not that different from the business we're already in. We're local. We're up to the challenge. And I know that if we struggle, I have you all got my back. And we don't know what's out there. And I'm not asking anybody for any more money. I'm not asking you to change the interlocal agreement. But a year or two from now, if we run into something that we just don't see, I will come back and ask for help if we need it. I can assure you of that. But this property needs us to own it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Dowling? Barry, then Penny?
Well, Penny was,
Well,
she was waiting before.
I stumbled up a little bit when we were reviewing this in agenda, and I was concerned that we didn't have a local property manager. Can you just explain, Commissioner Dorson helped me out, but he said that the property manager has to be a certified property manager. Can you just explain that a little bit? So, I mean, I think I understand it, but maybe for the rest of the board, it would be good.
The entity that really controls this property, that provided most of the funding, is the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. They provide a $5 million, no interest, no payment loan. They get to call the shots. They have said to us, they're fine with us being the owner, but they're not fine with us managing it because we don't have experience with tax credit projects. So we have to use one of their approved management companies. I have asked them specifically if there's an approved management company based in Orange County, and I haven't gotten an answer to that question yet. I have talked to 3 different management companies, none of which are based in Orange County, about potentially managing this property. And there's already a management company that's not based in Orange County managing the property. Hopefully I'll get the answer as to whether there's a local entity that could manage this, but I will get it. I'll get it. I just don't know if that exists. But we have to use an approved management company who understands all the compliance regulations, which is a business we're not in. Does that answer?
Yeah, that does.
So they're certified property management for North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. So what it takes is a 3-day test. There's a test. You go to a class for 3 days, and you take a test. Then you can become certified. So it's something that we can get someone in Orange County to do. We just haven't. So it's a possibility still that we could possibly, they could possibly work with someone in Orange County.
And just to follow up?
Of course.
Yeah, I don't have a problem necessarily with the idea of the certified property manager. I think that's important. As you say, you're a local, so you're here to keep an eye on it. I just would like to keep, I would like to keep the property manager local also, if we can. If we can't, it's not, I mean, we have to do what we have to do. But, I want to think about keeping that local if we can.
So you had a question about what is 80% of medium for a family of 4, and that's $58,650.
Thank you. So my question for Mr. Dowling is, you have said in the past and with increasing frequency that a big problem for the Community Home Trust is unit maintenance. So
Yes.
you're taking on 58 units.
We are.
What's the plan for maintenance?
We're applying for tax exemption. And we're going
To whom?
to the Orange County tax collector. We are eligible by the state statute for property tax exemption. The current owner is not. The property is losing money, and the difference between losing money and breaking even is the property taxes.
And how much is the property taxes?
It was 43,000 and change in 2016. They, as a result of revaluation, that declined to 27,000 in 2017.
And so you're confident that $27,000 is sufficient to maintain 58 units?
No. The property lost 50,000 last year, and the property taxes were 43,000. There's also another issue with an arrearage of an OWASA bill that requires a $2,000 monthly surcharge. Carrboro Board of Aldermen agreed to pay that off when we take possession. So in addition to the property tax exemption, we free up another $2,000 a month of cash flow between the two, property tax and OWASA surcharge being removed. This property should go from being in the red to being just barely into the black. What we'll do,
May I ask one more question?
Yes.
we're spreadsheet people, and we have a 20-year pro forma. Pro forma means you're just projecting what will happen, and may have no bearing on what actually will happen, but it's a projection of what you think will happen. And we're going to take the freed up cash flow and put it into the reserves to maintain the property.
May I ask just one more question? And so just between us, you basically gave us a nod that you'll probably have to come back to us for money sometime in the not-too-distant future.
I hope we don't.
Right, but
we will if we have to.
Sure, and we would anticipate that might be the case. But are you starting off basically in a position where it's going to be very difficult for you to not have to ask us? Or do you feel like you're in a position where if everything breaks your way, you're fine? I mean, where are we on that continuum?
We will be entering into negotiations with the current owner. I'd prefer not to reveal that. I know it's just between us, but somewhere there's cameras on me.
There's indeed.
Okay.
But we'll be having negotiations with the current owner about what we're asking them to do, and we'll see how that turns out.
Sort of an answer, thank you. Earl? Thank you, Attorney General Sessions.
I like the model that you're proposing. I like the idea of what this is addressing. I also agree with Commissioner Jacobs that it does not address workforce housing. And we're going to have a discussion on that. But for this project, I like the idea. I don't like the project. I own rental property. You can either make money or you can get bit badly. And we're going to get bit badly by this one. You've already given us a heads up that you're coming back for a supplement. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And there is no way that this project is going in the black if the tax bill was putting it in the red. There's no way. And you really haven't addressed the maintenance cost, because really, we need to know what kind of maintenance we're looking at. What condition are these units in? I bought a house, and it lost money from day one. The very first thing that happened 2 weeks after I bought it was the air conditioner went out. And then the roof went out. And then this and that and the other went out, and I lost money until I finally bailed out to stop the losses. You're not suggesting you're going to bail out to stop the losses. You're going to come to us for us to stop the losses. So I have a real issue buying into something that I know we're going to feed without knowing how big the appetite is going to be. So I'd really like to know more about this project and what the financials on this project are before we buy into it. I mean, the idea of the, the lower income rental properties intrigues me. But this project, I see I see red all over this project.
Mr. McKee, you've already bought into it. You've already got your money in the deal, and this thing's either going to go below the waves, or we're going to keep it propped up.
Well,
but you're already in.
I'm aware of that, but I'm concerned about how much further in we're going to be.
Well, let me just make just a couple of comments. Just on the question of workforce housing, right? So based on the numbers that we just heard, 40% of area median income is for a family of four is $29,325. 50% is $36,656, which is about the starting salary of a teacher.
Exactly.
60% is for a family of four, all these, is $43,988. So those are working people. Those are working class people. Those are people who work at the university. I don't know what the starting salary in our sheriff's department is, but that's all in the range of workforce housing. So I don't know what exactly people mean when they say this isn't workforce housing. That to me seems squarely in the workforce housing context. Let me also just point out, this board has made a priority of affordable rentals. And we've known from the beginning that those and at lower area median incomes, at targeting below 80% of area median income. And we know that those housing for those folks requires greater subsidy. These units could also be made available to Section 8 voucher holders. There may be some living in the property now, I don't know.
39 out of the 58 units are Section 8 voucher
Yeah,
holders.
so there's another county investment in the project. 39 are voucher holders. And there are other issues with there have been social justice issues related to the current management of this property and with the residents who live there. So we're not just getting the acumen, financial spreadsheet acumen of the Home Trust, we're also getting the kind of dedicated property management concern for residents that these folks have been denied for a long time. And I think really you need to make a project like this work. I mean, I appreciate all the concerns, and I think the questions are good. I also, this is 58 units. That is potentially, if this project it could just get sold, as I understand, ultimately.
It has to stay affordable per the restrictions, but it could fail.
And then it just goes away if it fails.
I don't know what happens if it fails.
So I appreciate all those concerns, but I think there is, I think there's a lot to recommend this, given our goals and our priorities, and who will actually be served. Mia?
One of the things that really struck me when we were approving the set of projects with our $2.5 million was how few there were. And I was thinking to myself, a lot of what we really definitely need to focus on is preserving the stock we have. And this definitely does that to the tune of 58 units. And so I also deal with rental housing, and it's challenging. However, I think it can't be more expensive to preserve 58 units than it is for us to essentially create 23 from scratch, more or less, with a couple of exceptions with empowerment. So I support this.
Other comments?
I'll just make
Renee, and then we'll come back this way.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Burrows. I think it's important that we continue with our policy of supporting rental housing, but also the concept of neighborhood preservation. And I've spent a lot of years doing just that. And, if we can get a building and keep it functioning well and provide decent and safe housing for people, I think it's worth it. We may not make a lot of money on it. We may make nothing on it, but we're giving people homes. We're giving at least 58 families or households homes to live in. So I can support this. And my understanding is really we're looking at the language of, what's defined in the contract. Is that correct?
There's no money being
There's no money.
requested.
No, it's just a change in the wording so that you qualify.
Correct.
Yeah.
Barry, then Earl?
I am not opposed to the project and I appreciated especially what the chair had to say. That was some information that's not in the documents. I am trying to get a better sense of what the realistic costs are as opposed to the hoped-for costs. And I understand that considering that you're still negotiating, you don't want to get into much more detail. But that part, the vulnerabilities not being known or articulated concerns me. I find it interesting, this is actually more units than we approved for $2.5 million.
Bingo.
So, in a way, it's too bad it didn't come up as part of the bond project discussion, because then if you did need money and you would come back to us and said, well, I really need a $100,000 capital backstop so that I can deal with X and Y, then it would have been a lot more comfortable, A, for me, and B, probably for our planning. And so perhaps there's nothing we can do about that now, but I think as we go forward talking about the rest of the bond money and how we're going to approach affordable housing units, we should keep this in mind as an example of a great opportunity that we may not adequately capitalize. We had an earlier discussion about PFAP. It's barely adequately capitalized. And so it's always looking for that one big client to make it big, which is out of its control, so that it can prosper. So I don't want to see Community Home Trust constantly scraping, as I know Robert has to on other units, to make sure that they're in good shape and they're livable and it's a successful project.
Earl?
I just want to be clear, I'm not going to vote against this project because I thoroughly believe that it addresses need. I'm also absolutely sure that it's cheaper to rehabilitate, repair, or whatever is necessary than it would be to build new. But that does not alleviate my concern that I know we're buying into something that we're going to continually feed. Now, as the chair mentioned, we go into this knowing there's subsidies, and we accept that. I would appreciate, as this project moves forward, keeping the board updated on where it's at, what it's costing, what the projections are, and particularly what the cost of the repairs and upgrades are going to be, giving us a better view of exactly where we're at and what we're getting into. And I'm glad that we're using it because it does address the demand.
All right, any further discussion? If not, then the manager recommendation is that if the board chooses to approve the request to acquire the property and the modifications to the development agreement as described in the abstract. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you, thank the board. I want to be clear, and I want to thank the manager, Travis, and Ms. Moore as well for just getting me on the agenda tonight before you went on break. But I want to be clear that I do not expect I'm going to come back to you and ask for money. I wanted to let you know, because I've been doing this for 20 years and I've always told you the truth, that it won't surprise me if some point in the future we have to come back, because we only know what we know. But I don't expect to have to come back, and I'm committed to making this thing work. And so I know it's going to be successful, and I know we're going to make it successful in part because you got my back, and I'm serious about that. That helps me going forward, because this thing is troubled. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you taking this on and the Home Trust taking it on, and we know that you have focused on home ownership for a long time, and that this is a little bit new for the Home Trust, but it's, as you've described, it's a critical need. This is a critical project. It achieves all of the goals that the commissioners have set out for our affordable housing priority. So we appreciate you taking it on, and we are confident that it's going to be successful. Thank you. All right, the next item, 6D, is the operations agreements for the Cedar Grove and Eflin Cheeks Community Centers. The board will consider entering into operating agreements with nonprofit organizations, the Cedar Grove Neighborhood Association and United Voices of Eflin Cheeks, for the operations of the county's Cedar Grove Community Center and Eflin Cheeks Community Center, respectively. You have some updated copies, I believe, at your places, and David Stansel is going to make the presentation, and we have someone signed up to speak as well.
Very good, thank you. And the updates that you have at your places are simply the signed versions of the agreements from the two neighborhood associations. Well, tonight we're very pleased to bring to you the culmination of several months of conversation and discussion about the operations of two community centers by neighborhood organizations in northern and western Orange County. Just as a side note, and the research that I've seen over the years and looking at recreation activities and other centers, one of the things that's a common theme at every successful community center is community engagement, community involvement, community input, community buy-in in the center itself. And so the agreements that you have before you tonight are really designed to pursue that goal. As you know, Orange County owns 3 community centers. The Eflin Cheeks Community Center was built in 1992. The Rogers Road Community Center opened in 2014. And the Cedar Grove Community Center opened last year in 2016, which is, of course, the redevelopment of the old Cedar Grove School. Eflin Cheeks also reopened with a regular schedule last June, despite having been open and created many years before. The Rogers Road Center, as you know, functions under an operations agreement with the Rogers Eubanks Neighborhood Association, or RENA. And in fact, it is this agreement that is the template for the documents that you have before you tonight. The RENA Rogers Road Operations Agreement, by the way, is still in effect. It runs through 2019. And actually, to address the updates that we're making here in this item, an addendum to the RENA agreement that adds the relevant portions of these new pieces is actually on your agenda later as a consent item. And RENA has agreed to that addendum document. Over the last 15 months, one existing and one new neighborhood association has come forward to offer to be the community-based group to operate the Eflin Cheeks and Cedar Grove Centers. United Voices of Eflin Cheeks, an existing community nonprofit, has worked with the county to position itself to take over operations of the Eflin Cheeks Community Center. During the same time frame, the new neighborhood association is formed in Cedar Grove, the Cedar Grove Neighborhood Association, CGNA for short. Both of these associations are incorporated under state law and are designated nonprofit organizations. And I would note that representatives from both of those groups are here with us tonight. Already, both of these organizations have been heavily involved and actively involved in the first year of center operations. They've undertaken a number of programs, too many for me to list now. You heard a little bit earlier about the anniversary celebration that happened at Cedar Grove this weekend. Both places are seeing the second year of summer enrichment programs that have just begun for a second summer at each location. And actually, here is a picture of the commencement ceremony from the Eflin Cheeks Summer Enrichment Program from last year. The boards of directors for both United Voices and Cedar Grove Neighborhood Association have reviewed the draft agreements. And after discussions with the county manager, county attorney, and staffs, they both have now approved the agreements. And of course, as I said earlier, you have signed copies of these agreements from the presidents of both organizations at your places tonight. The two agreements before you are almost identical in their terms and provisions. Both are set for initial 2-year terms, and that was chosen, by the way, to allow for modifications if we deem them necessary by either party in the short term, and they're renewable for 5-year terms upon mutual consent. Again, using that RENA agreement model, the agreements include use and operations expectations of both the organization and the county. Provisions are also included for insurance, the all-important volunteer network that makes those centers go, and the means and days and times of access. Generally, the agreements regarding access give the neighborhood associations exclusive rights of access to and use of the respective centers Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., Weekends and weeknights after 7 have been retained for residents' ability to reserve and use the facilities. And just so you'll know, both locations have proven to be very desirable locations for family reunions, birthday parties, and other events. However, there are 2 other ways that the associations can expand the use of the facility to additional hours. One is if the center and the facilities have not been reserved or rented, the associations have the right to use the centers as a matter of course, outside of their normal operating hours. And then in addition, knowing that there are going to be certain weekend and weeknight events that the associations are going to want to have throughout the year, we're going to work with them for priority booking. So we'll work in advance to identify dates that we'll block off the calendar for rentals and reservations. One significant addition to the agreements is a mechanism for funding the association operations of the center. In the past, funding assistance, as you may know, was requested through the county's outside agency funding process. However, upon reflection, the manager's recommended budget and the now adopted budget proposes to treat these associations, which of course partners with the county in operating the county facilities, as a part of the budget process. And so each center has been allocated funding this year for personnel. That's to hire a coordinator and support staff, backup staff. These would be employees of the associations, operating funds, and recurring capital needs. And going forward, the associations will identify their funding needs on an annual basis. They'll work with staff to incorporate these community center budgets into the overall county budget process. As noted previously, the county and each association have concurred on the proposed operations agreements. In order to allow the associations more time to hire their staff, complete their due diligence work, the effective date of the agreements has been set as August the 1st. And so manager's recommendation before you tonight is that the board approve each of the 2 operations agreements, one with the Cedar Grove Neighborhood Association for the Cedar Grove Community Center, and secondly, with the United Voices of Eflin Cheeks for the Eflin Cheeks Community Center. It's also recommended if events should require a different start date after August 1st for the actual transfer of operations, that the board authorize the manager to sign and execute the agreement if needed between August 1st and September 5th to provide that flexibility. And so in closing, these agreements involve the close interaction and assistance of a number of persons of all the parties, the presidents and board members of the neighborhood associations, the offices of the county manager, county attorney, risk manager, the chief information officer, the staffs in deeper and asset management services, and others. In particular, I'd like to recognize Major David Caldwell of the Sheriff's Office, who, of course, got us started last year along this project. And as a close, I'll show you a picture from Saturday's event of the Cedar Grove 1-year anniversary. We'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, are there questions? Questions for David? Earl?
Yes, Mr. Stansel. Currently, I think HYAA is using the ball fields. Is there any interaction between the community center and the community organization and those ball fields, or is that 2 separate agreements? Because I know there's interest within the community of occasionally using those ball fields. I think that's being accommodated, but does this change that arrangement in any way?
It does not. We have a separate license agreement with Hillsborough Youth Athletic Association, which runs for a couple more years, but as you've alluded, that organization so far has been very accommodating and very willing to work with us, particularly with field number 1, which is historically a part of the old Cedar Grove School. And so we've been able to work around that, and as long as we can identify the dates when those fields are needed, then I think we'll be successful.
Okay, I just want to make sure that there's not conflicts. I want to make sure that HYAA and the community can both be accommodated.
Yeah, I think there are going to be occasions where we'll probably have to sit down and talk around it, but HYA has shown willingness to do that.
Okay, that's good.
Other questions? Renee?
Well, my comment was related to that, and I was going to suggest that since this document is fine, as far as I'm concerned, but maybe in a separate document that the terms for using like the parking areas in the park be provided, spelled out so that other groups coming in understand that, that the organizations have kind of first rights on the building, but this is a little different from Marina because there is a park and parklands and a parking lot attached to it. So I was just, make that suggestion.
That's very true. That's true at both places, F and Sheiks as well as Cedar Grove.
Right. They have the ball fields and all, so if we could, just something that, an addendum that people can look at so that they understand and that, up front, and you don't have to sit down with every single meeting or every time somebody wants to use either the community centers to try to iron that out. Because I can just see that, even if there is a game, there may be issues over, okay, if there's a game happening on the field, but a family reunion inside the building, and then you've got a parking issue.
Yes, and that would be a pinch point that we would need to try and resolve.
Penny?
I just want to talk a little bit about the agreement. You're going to review it over a 2-year period. Is there room in that 2-year period, though, of flexibility if something isn't working? I mean, the centers, we're giving them the same agreement, but they could be different. Things could come up that are just unique to that specific center. So I'm just wondering if there's flexibility to change the agreement within that 2-year period and then re-examine it, I guess, after that 2-year period again to see if it's still working.
Yes, upon mutual consent of the two parties, certainly it could be amended and changed within that period.
Barry, and then Mia?
No, I'm sorry.
Weisenheimer?
How do the usage fees work? Does each center set up its own fee structure?
Well, the centers will set up their own structure for any reservations or rentals they allow during the period of time that they control the center. Outside of that, it will work through the county fee schedule and the facilities use policy with the fee schedule that we have. So it depends on when it's happening.
Okay, and does the county pay fees if it's during the time that the centers are in control of the center, or since we're the funder, are we exempt?
The agreement does not speak to that, and we certainly have had some occasions. I know it's been popular with several county departments to go up and use the facility, but once the center, it would basically be up to the associations to decide whether that was allowable or not during their operating hours. So that would become their call.
When we get to comments, I might have a comment.
Other questions at this point? There is someone signed up to speak, so I want to make sure she has a chance. If there's no other questions, let's hear from Elvira Mebane, if you would come up.
Good evening. And I'm not going to be before you long, but I'm the president of United Voices of Eflin Cheek, and I do have a board member and a member of United Voices with me this evening. And because of the lateness of the hour, all I want to do is to thank you all for allowing the county manager and her staff to work with us to get this done. I know that they have put in a lot of hours and working with both communities, well, all three communities, really, and we really do appreciate that because there's been a lot of back and forth going on, but we've all been able to work it out to in an agreement that we can all work with. And again, we just want to thank you and especially thank the county manager and her staff for all that they have done for the three communities.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and being so patient. All right, are there comments now? Was that all right, well, you don't, just raise your hand if you want to talk.
I thought it was like an auction, and it doesn't count.
Yeah, I know, it counts if I see you. Earl, then Barry.
Yes, I just want to mention that the thank yous go both ways. Both of these communities, and not to take anything away from the Rogers Road community, but the Rogers Road community had been organizing around opposition to that landfill for decades. These two communities pulled together very rapidly. They've accomplished a lot in a very short time. And the saying, you've come a long way, doesn't come close to covering it. And I really appreciate you coming in, and all of you all coming and sticking it out with us for, what is it, almost 3 hours now. So don't remind me, I got a closed session after this.
Barry?
Well, first I wanted to comment and compliment both the community groups and the manager and Mr. Stansel for coming up with a system that provides more autonomy for each group, provides funding for each group that it can control to a greater extent than if we just did it from Hillsborough, and that allows the groups to take ownership in a way of the facilities that they're obviously attached to and trying to make a more vital part of their communities. I don't know how I guess we weren't up to this point before when, for instance, we had something about it was the voluntary ag districts at the Cedar Grove Center. And so I don't think you were yet in a fee levying situation. But I would just hope that we have a tacit agreement that we're not going to, the county will not ask for prime times, and we'll work with the groups that are running the facilities, and the groups that are running the facilities will not charge the county for the use of facilities that it's already funding. And if we don't specify it, it'll be representative of the good faith efforts of everybody that have gotten us to this point.
Other comments? All right, then. The recommendation of the managers, we approve the operating agreements for the 2 community centers with the Cedar Grove Neighborhood Association and the United Voices of Effluent Cheeks. And as noted in the presentation, since the actual date of transfer of operations, while it's projected to be August 1, it may be a date sometime after that and before September 5th. So we're authorized, the motion is to approve these agreements, authorizing the manager to execute them and formally transfer operations for the 2 centers on a mutually agreed upon date and respective neighborhood associations if necessary prior to September 5th, 2017.
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Congratulations. Great day for Orange County.
Yes, it is.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming. All right, there are no reports, so we move on to the consent agenda, item 8. If anyone wants to remove any items from the consent agenda, now's the opportunity to do so. If not, let's get a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the entire consent agenda, items A through N. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. County Manager's report.
I'll be brief. I would just like to congratulate you on your adopted budget and also remind you that as you think about the process, if there are things that you would like to see changed for the budget process next year, not to hesitate and contact us because we will be doing debriefing for the next couple weeks and looking at how we can improve the process. That concludes my report.
Thank you. And congratulations to you for getting us through the budget process. It was relatively painless. County Attorney's report.
Nothing tonight.
All right, so that proceed. Now we're up to item 11, which is appointments. We have several to make tonight. The first one is the Alcohol Beverage Control Board appointments. And I'll just point out to the board, there are 2 items to vote on with this one. We have some appointments to make, and then this board appoints the chair of the board. So, Earl?
I'll make it in 2 separate motions. I would move the appointment of Keith Bagley and Mike Lassiter as reappointments for their positions.
Second.
Okay, any other nominations? Motion has been made and seconded. Keith Bagby for position 3, Mike Lassiter for position 4. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Now we need an appointment of the chair, and you see the 5 members there on the bottom of the page.
And Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we reappoint Mr. Greg Jarvis as chair. His term rotates out in a year. He's doing a good job. He's running it pretty well, so I make a motion for his reappointment.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to make Greg Jarvis the chair. Any other nominations? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Maybe he'll give us some more money next time.
Yes, sir. We'll work on
All
it.
right, we already did 11B, so we're on to item 11C, which is the Arts Commission appointment, and our Arts Commissioner is here. Do you want to say anything about this? You stayed so long, I feel like you ought to.
Fresh back from San Francisco.
I'll be very brief. We have 2 vacancies right now on the board, and the board is suggesting appointing Chris Kubica to one of those vacancies. He is a local author, he's an illustrator, software developer, he's involved in all sorts of artistic endeavors and is going to be a great addition to our board. And we are hoping to leave the 1 vacancy open through the summer. We have a few prospects right now that we are arranging meetings with, and we hope by the time y'all come back in September that we will have a full board.
All right, thank you. Thank you for being here.
I'll move Chris Kubica for position number 9.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other nominations? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in the morning.
All right, next up, 11D is the Board of Health appointment. And we've got 4 recommendations.
So I'll nominate Susan Elmore for position 1, Jessica Freda for position 3, Lith Galacki for position 4, and Dr. Bruce Baldwin for position 5.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Have we checked the bylaws to make sure we have no conflicts of any kind?
I've sent some extra emails just to make sure everybody was on the same page this
And
time.
we also had staff, Ms. Strange, check with the HR department as well.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded for these 4 nominees. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, 11E is the the Chapel Hill Library Board of Trustees.
I'd like to nominate Virginia Beckler.
Second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded for Virginia Beckford.
And Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate the reappointment of James R. Stroud.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded for James Stroud. Those are nominations for the same position. Are there any other nominations? All right. In that case, we'll take the motions in the order that they were brought. So all those in favor of, trying to find her application so I say it right this time. Virginia Beckler, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No. Let's see, hands. Who were voted aye? Okay, that's 3. Who voted no? That's 4, so that motion fails 3-4. The other nomination is for James Stroud. All those in favor? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, so that motion passes 4-3.
And Mr. Chairman, I would like to request, not only on this board, but, and I know we've done this repeatedly, but that we get some feedback from these folks. I think that may have been an issue.
Yes. He was invited and has been invited to each of our work sessions in the spring to come as outside boards are. He has never responded.
And Mr. Chair, if I may say, Commissioner Plessier and I met with Mr. Stroud when he was appointed. We specifically requested that he periodically meet with the county commissioners because we felt we had no contact with the Chapel Hill Library Board, and he has ignored that. We met for half an hour, and he's ignored it for 4 years. And I didn't want to say that before we voted, but that's why I certainly would. I'm sorry we reappointed him.
Well, I wish you had said that before we voted, because that's relevant information that would have helped the decision-making. And so, I don't know what else to say. Let's leave it all on the table, and we'll have more information to better make decisions. I would have liked to know that
Hey, Mr. Chair, since I've made the nomination, I will make it a point to take upon myself to convey the message from the board that we would like and expect feedback.
Okay. I would just say, if anybody has information about any of these nominees that is relevant, that might be relevant, I understand people want to be kind and not hurt people's feelings, but that's relevant, factual information, just like we get attendance reports now. So I encourage all of us to be candid in this as we go through these. So, all right. Next up is the Chapel Hill Parks, Greenways, and Recreation Commission appointments. (11F).
I'll nominate Emma Armstrong Carter for position 1.
The only one. Second.
All right, and I don't think there's anybody else to
There's
be
nobody
nominated,
else.
so.
Yeah.
All right,
Good for her.
all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, that passes 7-0. Next up, 11G is the Hillsborough Board of Adjustment appointments. There's a position and also an alternate.
Do we have to be mindful of anything on this one, Donna?
Not that we know of, and we have talked with the town of Hillsborough about it. They have, we had to wait to the last minute to get resolutions for their board to approve, and we got them right before this agenda was published, so no red flags.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll nominate Rob Bray for position number 1 and David Remington for position number 3.
Second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. Any other nominations or discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Next up is the Historic Preservation Commission.
I'll nominate Thomas Loader for position 2.
Second.
All right, any other nominations? All right, motion has been made and seconded for Thomas Loader for position 2. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. And the last one is the Nursing Home Community Advisory Board. And there is, as you'll see on your agenda item, there's a note that these positions require a 1-year training program from the date of the appointment.
I'll nominate Jennifer Moore for position 5 and Peggy Iris Lanier for position 10.
Second.
All right, any other nominations? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. All right, I think that brings us to the end of this part of the meeting. And so now I need a motion to go into closed session to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, conditions of initial appointment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee, NCGS 143-318-11A6.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, into closed session we go.
Todd?